The quarterly report glowed on my laptop screen, each number a testament to what could have been. Our competitors had posted record profits, their construction division alone pulling in 40 million. Meanwhile, I sat in my cramped office at Brennan and Associates, a mid-tier engineering firm that paid enough to keep the lights on, but not enough to stop the what-ifs from haunting me at 3 in the morning. My name is Matthew Cooper. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a structural engineer in Atlanta, designing buildings that other people will profit from. It's honest work, my grandfather would have said. The kind where you can see what you've built, where your signature on the plans means something. But sitting here on a Friday evening, everyone else gone home to their families, I couldn't help but think about the company that should have been partly mine. The empire built on betrayal that my father now ruled like a king who'd forgotten he'd stolen his crown. 5 years. It had been 5 years since Grandpa vanished, and the wound still felt fresh. 5 years since my father and brother had moved like vultures, claiming what wasn't theirs to take. 5 years of family dinners where his name was never mentioned, as if Samuel Cooper had never existed, had never built Cooper Construction from nothing into something worth stealing. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. Elena, don't forget, reunion tomorrow. I pressed your suit. The annual Cooper family reunion. Another chance for my father to parade his success, for my brother to sneer at my middle-class existence, for my mother to ask when I was going to stop being stubborn and join the family business. As if I could join something that had been built on a disappearance that still made no sense. I closed the laptop and gathered my things. Tomorrow would be another performance. Another day of biting my tongue while my father told his version of history. The version where Grandpa had retired suddenly and trusted him to carry on the legacy. The version everyone pretended to believe because the truth was too uncomfortable for polite conversation. The drive home took me past the original Cooper Construction office, a small brick building on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. Grandpa had kept it even after the company outgrew it, said it reminded him where he came from. Now it had a for lease sign in the window. My father had sold it within a month of taking over, called it dead weight and inefficient use of capital. I'd driven past it the day they put up the sign, sat in my car and cried like a child. Not because of the building itself, but because of what it represented. Every trace of Samuel Cooper was being systematically erased, replaced by my father's vision of chrome and glass and profit margins that mattered more than people. Elena was in the kitchen when I got home, the smell of her famous lasagna filling the house. She looked up as I entered, her expression softening at whatever she saw in my face. Rough day. Just thinking about tomorrow, I admitted, kissing her cheek. About seeing them all again. We don't have to go, she offered, not for the first time. We could say I'm sick, or the car broke down, or... No. I loosened my tie, trying to release some of the tension. Running away doesn't change anything. Besides, maybe this year will be different. Elena's look suggested she knew better, but she didn't argue. She'd been there through all of it, the disappearance, the takeover, the family fracture that followed. She'd held me when I raged about the injustice, supported me when I refused to work for my father, understood when I couldn't let go of the questions that had no answers. Your mom called, she said carefully. Wanted to make sure we were coming. Said your father has a big announcement. Let me guess. Another acquisition? Another record year built on the foundation Grandpa laid. She didn't say. But Matthew. She touched my arm. Maybe it's time to let this go. It's been 5 years. Your grandfather isn't coming back, and holding on to this anger is only hurting you. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that Grandpa was out there somewhere, that he wouldn't have just abandoned everything he built. But 5 years of searching had yielded nothing. No body, no trail, no explanation. Just an empty house one morning and a note that said, had to go. Take care of each other. Take care of each other. We'd done a spectacular job of that. That night, I lay awake thinking about the last time I'd seen him. It was a Sunday, 2 days before he vanished. We'd gone fishing at Lake Lanier, just the two of us, like we'd done since I was 7 years old. He'd been quiet, more thoughtful than usual, but I'd attributed it to age. He was 78 after all, entitled to his contemplative moments. "Matthew," he'd said as we sat on the dock, our lines cast into the still water, "what do you think makes a man's life worthwhile?" "Success," I'd offered. "Building something that lasts?" He'd smiled, but it was sad around the edges. I used to think that. Spent 50 years building Cooper Construction, making sure it would outlive me. But lately, I wonder if I focused on the wrong things. "What do you mean?" "Your father and brother," he'd said slowly. "They see the company as a prize to be won. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Deals to be made. They don't see what I tried to build. A place where people mattered, where a handshake meant something, where profit was important but not everything. They're just driven," I'd said, trying to defend them even though I knew he was right. "Driven off a cliff, maybe." He'd reeled in his line, found it empty, cast again. "You're different, Matthew. You see people, not just possibilities. That's why you'll never fit into what Cooper Construction is becoming." "Is that why you won't let me work there?" I'd asked, a question that had bothered me for years. My father and Ryan held executive positions, but Grandpa had always steered me away. "I'm protecting you," he'd said simply. "From them. From what it would do to you. From what's coming." I should have asked what he meant. Should have pushed for answers. But the fish were biting, and the sun was warm, and I'd thought we had all the time in the world for difficult conversations. 2 days later, he was gone. The reunion was held at the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead, because of course it was. My father had long since abandoned the family tradition of backyard barbecues and potluck dinners. Now it was valet parking and open bars and a ballroom that cost more than some people's annual salary. Elena and I arrived fashionably late, hoping to minimize the time spent making small talk with relatives who'd chosen sides in a war they didn't fully understand. The ballroom was already crowded with Coopers and their associates, the sound of forced laughter and clinking glasses creating a symphony of insincerity. "Matthew!" My mother materialized from the crowd, resplendent in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. "You made it!" "Hi, Mom." I accepted her air kisses, noting the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Nice party. Your father spared no expense. He wants everything perfect for the announcement." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Cooper Construction is going public. Can you believe it? IPO next month. We're going to be richer than God." My stomach turned. Going public. Selling off pieces of Grandpa's legacy to the highest bidder. Turning a family business into a corporate machine. "That's great," I managed. "Oh, there's your brother, Ryan. Come say hello to Matthew." Ryan approached with his usual swagger, his wife Brittany trailing behind like an accessory. At 37, my older brother had embraced everything about the corporate life. The expensive suits, the calculated smile, the ability to shake your hand while calculating your net worth. "Little brother," he said, his handshake just firm enough to establish dominance. "Still playing with blueprints? Still building things that don't collapse under the weight of their own greed?" I replied pleasantly. His smile tightened. "Cute. How's that working out for you financially?" "I sleep well at night. In a 2-bedroom ranch in Marietta. I sleep well too. In a 6-bedroom estate in Tuxedo Park. Boys?" Our mother intervened, her laugh tinkling like broken glass. "Please, not tonight. This is a celebration." "Of course," Ryan said smoothly. celebrating 5 years of unprecedented growth. Dad's really taken Cooper Construction to new heights. Grandpa's company, I corrected. Dad just inherited it. Inherited. Ryan's eyes glittered dangerously. Is that what you call stepping up when the old man abandoned ship? Someone had to take charge, and it sure wasn't going to be you. I wasn't given the option, because you would have run it into the ground with your bleeding heart philosophies. People over profit doesn't pay the bills, Matthew. It built the company in the first place. Different times, Ryan dismissed. Grandpa's methods were fine for his generation, but business evolved. He didn't. That's why he left. He didn't leave, I insisted. He disappeared. There's a difference. Is there? Man in his 70s, wife dead. Company changing faster than he could adapt? Sounds like leaving to me. I wanted to punch him. Wanted to grab his silk tie and shake him until he admitted the truth. That they'd pushed Grandpa out, made him feel obsolete in his own company, valued his assets more than his wisdom. But Elena's hand on my arm held me back, her touch reminding me that some battles weren't worth fighting in public. If you'll excuse us, she said smoothly, I need to find the ladies' room. She guided me away before I could do something that would make the society pages for all the wrong reasons. We found a quiet corner near the service entrance, away from the crowd and their casual cruelty. He's not worth it, Elena said softly. He's rewriting history. They all are. Making Grandpa into some doddering old fool who couldn't hack it anymore. You know the truth. I know the truth. Isn't that enough? No, I said honestly. Not when they're about to sell his life's work to Wall Street. Not when they've turned everything he built into everything he hated. Elena sighed and straightened my tie. What do you want to do? Leave? Not yet. I want to hear this announcement. Want to see my father gloat about destroying Grandpa's legacy once and for all. We returned to the ballroom just as my father took the stage. Richard Cooper, 62 years old and wearing success like armor. He'd always been handsome in a calculated way, but 5 years of unchecked power had added something harder to his features. He looked like what he was. A man who'd gotten everything he wanted and found it still wasn't enough. Family, friends, valued associates, he began, his voice carrying easily through the room. Thank you for joining us tonight. 5 years ago, Cooper Construction faced a crossroads. My father, Samuel Cooper, decided to step away from the company he'd built, trusting me to carry on his legacy. I snorted. Elena squeezed my hand in warning. It wasn't easy, my father continued. Change never is. But with vision, determination, and the support of my family, especially my son Ryan, we've transformed Cooper Construction from a modest regional contractor into a national powerhouse. Applause rippled through the room. I spotted my aunts and uncles, cousins and family friends, all nodding along with the narrative. Had they forgotten Grandpa so easily? Or had they simply chosen the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth? Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce the next chapter in the Cooper Construction story. Next month, we will launch our initial public offering, valued at. The ballroom doors burst open with a bang that echoed like thunder. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Every breath seemed to hold. Because there, framed in the doorway like a ghost made flesh, stood Samuel Cooper. My grandfather. Alive. Real. And absolutely furious. He looked older, of course. 5 years had added lines to his face and whitened what remained of his hair. But his eyes, those sharp blue eyes that could see through any lie, burned with a fire I'd never seen before. He wore a simple gray suit, nothing like the designer clothing filling the room, but he commanded attention like a king returning from exile. "Hello, Richard," he said. his voice carrying despite its quietness. Miss me. My father's face went through a series of transformations. Shock, fear, confusion, and finally a kind of desperate calculation. The microphone slipped from his hand, hitting the stage with a squeal of feedback that made everyone wince. Dad. The word came out strangled. How are you? Alive. Grandpa stepped into the room, his presence seeming to fill it. Yes, disappointing, I'm sure. Though not as disappointing as discovering my son has been telling people I abandoned my company, that I trusted him with my legacy, that I left of my own accord. You did leave, my father managed, finding his voice. Your note. My note said I had to go. It didn't say I was giving you permission to steal everything I built. The word steal cracked through the air like a whip. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ryan pushed through the people, reaching the stage to stand beside our father. Grandpa, he said, attempting charm. This is incredible. We thought you were dead. We searched. For exactly 3 weeks, Grandpa interrupted. Until the courts declared me legally absent and allowed you to take control of my assets. Very convenient timing, wouldn't you say? We had to protect the company, my father insisted. Employees depending on us, contracts to fulfill. Spare me. Grandpa's voice could have cut glass. I've spent 5 years watching what you did to protect my company. Fired anyone who showed loyalty to me. Sold off the divisions that weren't profitable enough. Turned my business into a soulless money machine. We modernized, Ryan protested. Increased profits by 300%. By betraying everything I stood for. By treating workers like expenses instead of people. By cutting corners on safety to maximize margins. By becoming exactly the kind of company I spent my life competing against. I found myself moving forward, drawn by a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. Grandpa's eyes found mine in the crowd, and for the first time in 5 years, his expression softened. Matthew, he said, my boy, come here. I walked to him in a daze, aware of every eye in the room following my movement. When I reached him, he pulled me into a hug that smelled of sawdust and Old Spice and home. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sorry I left you to deal with them alone. But I had my reasons. Where were you? I asked, my voice thick with emotions I couldn't name. Getting proof, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Evidence of what your father and brother were planning. What they'd already done. What they intended to do once I was out of the way. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. 5 years of investigation. 5 years of following paper trails and documenting betrayals. Would you like to know what I found, Richard? My father had gone pale, his usual confidence evaporating like morning mist. I don't know what you think you found. Embezzlement, for starters. You've been skimming from Cooper Construction since before I disappeared. Small amounts at first, hidden in inflated expense reports and ghost employees. But it added up. Nearly $2 million over 10 years. Gasps rippled through the room. Ryan stepped forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. That's slander. You can't prove. Can't I? Grandpa pulled out a document. Bank records. Offshore accounts in the Caymans. Shell companies that trace back to you and your father. It's all here, Ryan. Every dirty dollar. Even if that were true, my father said, trying to regain control, the statute of limitations doesn't apply to ongoing crimes, Grandpa finished. Which brings me to the more interesting discoveries. Like the fact that you were planning a hostile takeover 6 months before I disappeared. I have the emails, Richard. The ones where you discuss handling the old man and clearing the path. My blood ran cold. You knew they were going to force you out? I suspected, but I needed proof. So I gave them what they wanted, my absence, while I gathered what I needed. This is ridiculous, Ryan blustered. You abandoned the company. We stepped up. Everything we did was legal. Legal and moral aren't the same thing, Grandpa said. But let's talk about legal, shall we? Like the forged documents you used to transfer ownership. My signature on papers I never signed. Documents dated after I disappeared, but somehow notarized by a very cooperative friend of yours. The room had gone deadly silent. Family members who'd been celebrating moments before now looked at my father and Ryan with dawning horror. You can't prove forgery, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, I can. Amazing what a good forensic document examiner can find. Pressure patterns, ink age, paper composition. Your friend at the notary has already agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. You're lying. Grandpa smiled, and it was terrible. Am I? Would you like to call Albert Hensley right now? Oh wait, you can't. He's in federal custody, has been since this morning. The FBI was very interested in what he had to say. My father staggered, reaching for the podium to steady himself. The FBI? Wire fraud across state lines. Forged documents used to transfer assets worth over $100 million. Conspiracy to commit fraud. The list goes on. Grandpa turned to address the room. I apologize for the drama, but I wanted you all to hear this, to understand what kind of men have been running Cooper Construction in my absence. Grandpa, I said, my mind reeling. You planned all this? Disappearing, gathering evidence, coming back tonight. Not all of it, he admitted. I didn't plan to be gone so long, but once I started pulling threads, the whole tapestry unraveled. Your father and brother weren't just planning to take the company. They were planning to destroy it, gut it for parts, sell off the profitable divisions and abandon the rest. That's business, Ryan said defensively. Maximizing value. That's greed, Grandpa corrected. And it stops now. You can't stop anything, my father said, finding a last reserve of defiance. I'm the legal owner. The courts confirmed it. Whatever claims you think you have are supported by the fact that I'm very much alive and never legally transferred anything to you. Your entire claim rests on documents we've now established were forged, which means every decision you've made, every contract you've signed, every asset you've sold, all of it is null and void. The implications hit the room like a shockwave. 5 years of deals, partnerships, acquisitions, all potentially invalid. You'll destroy the company, my father said. Thousands of jobs. Will be protected, Grandpa said firmly. I've already met with the board. Yes, Richard, the board you thought was loyal to you. Turns out they're more loyal to staying out of federal prison. We've worked out a transition plan that protects employees and honors legitimate contracts while unwinding your illegal actions. When? Ryan demanded. When did you meet with the board? Over the past month. Did you really think I'd show up here without laying groundwork? I've been back in Atlanta for 6 weeks, meeting with lawyers, federal agents, and yes, board members. Building a case that will hold up in court and ensuring Cooper Construction survives your attempted murder. Murder! My mother spoke for the first time, her voice shrill. Richard, what is he talking about? My father's face had gone from pale to gray. Nothing. He's confused. Senile. The brake lines on my truck, Grandpa said conversationally, cut 3 days before I disappeared. Fortunately, I noticed the puddle of brake fluid before I drove anywhere. That's actually what convinced me to leave, realizing my own son wanted me dead. The room erupted. Family members shouting, accusations flying, my mother demanding answers. Through it all, Grandpa stood calm in the eye of the storm he'd created. "I have the mechanic's report," he continued once the noise died down. "The security footage from the garage. Even the receipt for the cutting tool Ryan purchased 2 days earlier. Hardware store on Piedmont. Paid cash, but they remembered you. Not many customers buy that specific tool and nothing else." Ryan's face had joined my father's in the gray spectrum. "I want a lawyer." "Good idea. You'll need one. The FBI will be here shortly to arrest you both." I wanted family to hear it first, to understand why. But make no mistake, this isn't revenge. This is justice. "Grandpa," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Why didn't you tell me? 5 years I thought you were dead. Do you know what that did to me?" His expression crumbled, showing the weight of those 5 years. "I couldn't risk it, Matthew. They were watching you, hoping you'd lead them to me. Any contact would have put you in danger and compromised the investigation. But I kept tabs on you. I know about every building you designed, every promotion you earned on your own merit, every night you drove past the old office and grieved for what was lost. You were watching me, protecting you. There's a difference. Just like I protected you by keeping you out of the company when I saw what your father and brother were becoming. You're the only Cooper left who understands what I was trying to build. Which is why I need you now." "For what?" "To help me rebuild. Cooper Construction needs leadership that values more than profit. It needs someone who understands that buildings are more than steel and concrete. They're spaces where people live and work and dream. It needs you, Matthew." I felt Elena's hand slip into mine, grounding me as the world shifted on its axis. "I'm not a businessman. I'm an engineer. Same thing done right. Buildings stand or fall based on their foundation. So do companies. So do families." He looked around the room at cousins and aunts and uncles who'd stood by while my father dismantled his legacy. "This family's foundation has been rotten for too long. Time to tear it down and build something better." The sound of sirens cut through the night, growing closer. My father and Ryan exchanged panicked looks, calculating their options. But Grandpa had been thorough. Security guards had quietly blocked the exits during his revelations. "Running makes it worse," Grandpa advised. "Face what you've done. Take responsibility. It's the only way to salvage any dignity from this." "Dignity?" My father laughed bitterly. "You destroyed me in front of everyone. My own father. Your father who you tried to kill. Your father whose life's work you stole. Your father whose values you betrayed at every turn." Grandpa's voice was steady but sad. "I didn't destroy you, Richard. You destroyed yourself. I just refused to let you take everyone else down with you." The FBI agents entered with professional efficiency. Badges out, movements coordinated. The lead agent nodded to Grandpa with familiar respect. Clearly, they'd been working together for some time. "Richard Cooper? Ryan Cooper? We have warrants for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." I watched them handcuff my father and brother, saw the fight go out of them as reality set in. My mother stood frozen, designer dress and carefully crafted life crumbling around her. Other family members backed away, as if crime might be contagious. "Mrs. Cooper," the agent addressed my mother, "we'll need to speak with you as well. You're not under arrest at this time, but there are questions about your knowledge of your husband's activities." She looked at Grandpa with something between hatred and desperation. "How could you do this to your own son? How could he do this to his own father?" Grandpa countered. "I gave Richard everything: love, opportunity, trust. He repaid me with betrayal and attempted murder. The question isn't how I could seek justice. The question is how I could not." They led my father and Ryan away in handcuffs, past family members who'd celebrated their success minutes before. The ballroom that had hosted their triumph became the stage for their downfall. Poetic justice served with federal warrants. As the chaos continued around us, Grandpa turned to me. "I'm sorry, Matthew. Sorry you had to see this. Sorry it took so long. Sorry I couldn't find another way. But they left me no choice." "I understand," I said, and meant it. "But Grandpa, where have you been? 5 years is a long time to gather evidence." He smiled sadly. "Various places. Started in Mexico, ironically, which is where they expected me to run. Then Canada, investigating the shell companies they'd set up. Spent a year in New York working with forensic accountants. The last 2 years mostly in D.C., coordinating with federal authorities. Not the retirement I'd planned." "You gave up 5 years of your life to stop them?" "I gave up 5 years to save what mattered. The company, yes, but more importantly, the people who depend on it. The workers they would have laid off. The pensions they would have raided. The communities that rely on Cooper Construction for honest work at fair prices. And you, Matthew. Always you." "Me? You think I didn't know what would happen if I'd stayed and fought openly? They'd have forced you to choose sides, made you complicit or cast you out. This way you stayed clean, built your own reputation, proved you could succeed without the Cooper name opening doors. Now, when you take over, no one can say it's nepotism." "Take over?" I stepped back. "Grandpa, I can't." "Can't? Or won't? Because those are different things." He pulled another envelope from his jacket. "Your professional record. Every building you've designed. Every project you've managed. Every recommendation from colleagues who respect your work. You're not just qualified, Matthew. You're exactly what Cooper Construction needs. I'm an engineer, not a CEO. The best CEOs understand what their company actually does. Too many executives see numbers and forget those numbers represent real things. Real buildings, real workers, real communities. You'll never forget because you've been in the trenches. You know what it takes to build something that lasts." Elena squeezed my hand. "He's right, you know. You've been preparing for this your whole life, even if you didn't know it." I looked around the ballroom, at family members still processing what they'd witnessed, at the FBI agents taking statements, at the podium where my father had stood minutes before announcing his plans to sell Grandpa's legacy to the highest bidder. "It won't be easy," I said. "The legal challenges alone will be handled by the best firm in Atlanta. I've already retained them. The transition team is in place. The board is prepared to vote. All that's missing is you. What about the family? They'll never accept this." Grandpa's expression hardened. "The family that stood by while your father and brother robbed me? That celebrated their theft? That chose comfort over conscience? They'll accept it or find themselves examined for complicity. The FBI investigation doesn't end with Richard and Ryan." Several relatives overheard and paled, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. Within minutes, the ballroom had half emptied. Rats fleeing a sinking ship they'd been happy to sail on when it seemed profitable. "Let them go," Grandpa said. "We'll build a new family, one based on merit and loyalty, not blood and greed." Is that possible? After all this? Anything's possible when you start with a clean foundation. Cooper Construction will rise again, stronger for having its rot exposed. And you'll lead it, not because you're my grandson, but because you're the right man for the job. I thought about the past 5 years, the grief of losing him, the rage at my father's betrayal, the frustration of watching everything Grandpa built be perverted into its opposite. And now the chance to make it right. "Okay," I said, "I'll do it, but on one condition." Grandpa raised an eyebrow. "Negotiating already?" Good. What's your condition? We do it together. You've been gone 5 years, and the company needs your wisdom as much as my energy. I'll be CEO, but you're chairman of the board. Deal? For the first time since he'd walked through those doors, Grandpa truly smiled. Deal. Though I warn you, I'm a tough boss. I'm counting on it. We shook hands, and I felt the weight of legacy settle on my shoulders. But unlike the burden my father had carried, the weight of stolen goods and guilty conscience, this felt right. Heavy, yes, but balanced. The weight of responsibility accepted rather than seized. So what happens now? Elena asked. Now we rebuild, Grandpa said. We contact employees, assure them their jobs are safe. We meet with clients, guarantee contracts will be honored. We audit every department, clean out the corruption, restore the values that matter. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And the family? I asked, gesturing to the relatives still present, watching us with expressions ranging from hope to calculation. The family learns what family really means. Those who understand are welcome to be part of the future. Those who don't, he shrugged. Cooper Construction succeeded without them before. It will again. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Matthew, Ryan's voice, calling from custody. You have to help me. This is insane. We're family. Yes, I said. We are. Which is why I'm going to give you the same help you gave Grandpa when you cut his brake lines. The same loyalty you showed when you forged his signature. The same love you demonstrated when you celebrated his disappearance. That's not. I didn't. Save it for the jury, Ryan. And don't call again. I hung up and blocked the number. Grandpa nodded approvingly. That was harder than it looked, I admitted. The right thing usually is, but it gets easier with practice. And Matthew, you've been practicing your whole life, even when you didn't realize it. Every time you chose integrity over advantage. Every time you built something solid instead of something flashy. Every time you remembered that business is about people, not just profit. The FBI agents finished their initial interviews and began wrapping up. The lead agent approached us, his expression professional but tinged with respect. Mr. Cooper, he addressed Grandpa, we'll need you to come to the office tomorrow for formal statements. You too, Mr. Matthew Cooper. Your cooperation has been invaluable, but there's still work to be done. Of course, Grandpa said. Whatever you need. Justice delayed is still better than justice denied. After the agents left, the remaining family members began approaching, tentative and uncertain. Some offered congratulations, others condolences for the arrest of my father and brother. Most seemed unsure how to process what they'd witnessed. A family empire revealed as a criminal enterprise. A dead patriarch returned to reclaim his throne. Aunt Catherine, my father's sister, was braver than most. Sam, she said, using Grandpa's first name like a peace offering. We should have known, should have questioned. Richard always was too smooth, too ready with explanations. I'm sorry. Apologies are a start, Grandpa said, but actions matter more. Cooper Construction will need good people as we rebuild. People who understand that integrity isn't optional. Are you interested? In what? In being part of something better than what we've been. In helping create a company and a family that Samuel Cooper would have been proud of from the beginning. She straightened, decision crystallizing in her expression. Yes, I am. One by one, other family members made their choices. Some slunk away, unwilling to trade their comfortable complicity for uncertain righteousness. But others stepped forward, admitting their doubts about the official story, their regrets about not questioning harder, their desire to be part of whatever came next. By the time the ballroom emptied, we had the beginnings of something new. Not the Cooper family as it had been, corrupted by greed and held together by shared guilt, but something cleaner. Smaller, perhaps, but stronger for it. "You did it," I told Grandpa as we finally prepared to leave. "You burned it all down and gave us a chance to build better." "We did it," he corrected. "And the building's just beginning. You ready for the hard part?" I looked at Elena, who nodded her support. Thought about the company that needed saving, the family that needed healing, the legacy that needed honoring. "I'm ready," I said, and for the first time in 5 years I meant it. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, corporate restructuring, and personal reckonings. The trial of Richard and Ryan Cooper became Atlanta's most-watched drama. A Shakespearean tragedy played out in federal court. The evidence Grandpa had compiled was overwhelming. Financial records, emails, recorded conversations, even video surveillance of Ryan purchasing the tools used to sabotage the truck. My father, faced with the mountain of proof, eventually pled guilty to avoid the attempted murder charge. 20 years for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. He'd be 78 when he got out, the same age Grandpa had been when he'd been forced to disappear. Ryan fought harder, convinced his legal training could find loopholes. But forensic evidence doesn't lie, and his own greed had left too many traces. 30 years, with no possibility of parole for 20. The golden boy who'd had everything and wanted more would spend his best years in a federal cell. My mother divorced my father before the trial ended, claiming she'd known nothing of his crimes. The FBI couldn't prove otherwise, though her sudden amnesia about family finances that she'd once managed with microscopic attention suggested selective memory. She moved to Florida, where no one knew the Cooper name, and started over as a real estate agent. We exchanged Christmas cards, but nothing more. Cooper Construction's transition was smoother than anyone had expected. Grandpa's planning had been meticulous. He'd identified key employees who'd remained loyal to his vision, contracts that needed honoring, and divisions that could be salvaged. The company lost some clients who'd been attracted by my father's ruthless efficiency, but gained others who valued integrity over pure profit margins. I threw myself into learning the business side, guided by Grandpa and a team of advisors who understood what we were trying to rebuild. It wasn't easy. Engineering is about solving defined problems with calculable solutions. Business is about navigating human complexity, competing interests, and ethical gray areas that my father had painted black. But gradually I found my footing. Maybe because I approached it like engineering, building systems that worked, strengthening weak points, ensuring the foundation could support future growth. Or maybe because Grandpa had been right all along. I'd been preparing for this my whole life without knowing it. The old office on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard became our headquarters again. We bought it back from the company that had been leasing it, had it renovated to modern standards while preserving its character. Grandpa's office was restored exactly as it had been, down to the fishing photos on the wall and the ancient coffee maker that somehow still worked. "Why keep it the same?" I asked him one day, finding him at his desk like the past 5 years had been a dream. "To remember," he said simply, "where we came from, what we're fighting for, what happens when we forget." The company evolved under our leadership. We kept the profitable divisions but changed how they operated: fair wages, real benefits, investment in safety that my father had seen as overhead. We started a training program for young people from underserved communities, teaching them trades that could support families. We bid on projects that mattered: affordable housing, community centers, structures that served rather than just profited. Revenue dipped initially as we adjusted, but within 18 months, we were exceeding my father's numbers. Turns out, treating people well is profitable in the long run. Who knew? The family evolved too. Those who'd stood with us during the chaos became the core of something new. Aunt Catherine headed our community outreach division. Cousins who'd been shut out by my father's nepotism found places where their skills mattered. We instituted a simple rule. Family got no special treatment, but no special obstacles either. Merit mattered, but so did values. Some relatives never forgave Grandpa for exposing the truth. They preferred the comfortable lie to the uncomfortable revelation. But others thanked him, said they'd always suspected something was wrong but hadn't known how to voice it. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt connections based on honesty rather than appearance. Elena and I had our first child 2 years after Grandpa's return. A daughter we named Samantha after him. He held her in the hospital, tears streaming down his weathered face. "She'll grow up different," he promised. "Knowing her worth isn't tied to her achievements. Understanding that family means showing up, not showing off. Free to be herself, not some performed version someone else scripted." "The way you wanted us to grow up," I said. "The way I failed to ensure you could. But that's the thing about mistakes. They're only final if you stop trying to fix them." Ryan wrote me a letter from prison 3 years into his sentence. Not an apology, I don't think he was capable of that yet, but an acknowledgement. He said he understood now what he'd lost in pursuit of what he'd wanted. That sitting in a cell gave him time to think about choices and consequences. He asked about the company, about Grandpa, about the family he'd betrayed for profit. I wrote back, sent photos of the renovated headquarters, the community center we'd built in Grandpa's name, the employees whose jobs we'd saved, told him about Samantha, about the family gatherings that felt real instead of performed. I didn't forgive, that wasn't mine to give, but I offered hope. People could change, given time and reason. Even golden boys who'd forgotten not everything that glitters is worth having. My father never wrote. Pride, perhaps, or shame so deep it calcified into silence. He served his time quietly, a model prisoner who taught financial literacy to other inmates. Ironic, considering his own financial crimes. I kept tabs through official channels but made no contact. Some bridges, once burned, light the way forward rather than back. 5 years after Grandpa's dramatic return, 10 years after his disappearance, Cooper Construction went public. But not the way my father had planned. We structured it as a benefit corporation, legally bound to consider workers, communities, and environment alongside profit. Shareholders would make money, but not at the expense of everything else. The IPO celebration was held in the restored headquarters, not a fancy hotel. Employees were given first chance at shares, ensuring those who built the company owned part of it. The media called it unconventional and risky. Grandpa called it right. He retired for real that day, handing me the chairman's gavel with hands that shook only slightly. At 88, he'd earned his rest. But he still came to the office twice a week, still reviewed major decisions, still reminded us why we were doing this. "You've built something better than I ever did," he told me that night, as we sat in his office sharing a glass of whiskey older than my daughter. "I built on your foundation," I corrected. "Just cleared away what didn't belong." "No, you built something new. I created a successful company. You created a successful company with a soul. There's a difference. Because of what you taught me, what you sacrificed to protect." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been thinking about forgiveness lately, whether I should visit Richard, whether there's anything left to salvage between father and son. What's stopping you? Pride, maybe, or fear that forgiveness looks like approval, that acknowledging him as my son validates what he did. Or maybe," I suggested carefully, "forgiveness is just acknowledging that people are more than their worst moments, that loving someone doesn't mean excusing their actions, but it might mean not defining them solely by those actions." He smiled sadly. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. The best, actually. He disappeared for 5 years to protect what mattered, then came back to show us that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Grandpa visited my father the next month. I don't know what they said to each other. Some conversations are too private even for family stories. But when he returned, something in his expression had eased, like a bone finally set properly after years of aching. "He's still my son," was all he said. Disappointed, defeated, but still my son. That has to count for something. Cooper Construction thrived in the years that followed. We became known for quality over quantity, for projects that improved communities rather than just extracting value. Young engineers sought us out, wanting to work for a company that proved profit and principle could coexist. Old competitors copied our benefit corporation model, raising standards industry-wide. But the real success was smaller, quieter. It was family dinners where no one performed happiness. It was Grandpa teaching Samantha to fish at Lake Lanier, passing on patience along with technique. It was former employees stopping me on the street to say thank you for saving their jobs, their pensions, their faith in fair dealing. It was the letter from Ryan saying he'd been approved for early release, that he wanted to make amends, to work for the family company in whatever capacity we'd have him. Not as an executive, those days were done, but maybe in community outreach, using his fall as a cautionary tale for business students. Grandpa and I discussed it for hours before agreeing. Redemption should be possible for those who genuinely seek it. He came home humbled, grayed by his years inside but somehow more real for it. The golden boy tarnish had been replaced by something more human. He started in the mailroom, his choice, not ours, and worked his way into teaching ethics seminars for our management training program. Turns out, no one explains the cost of corruption quite like someone who's paid it in full. My father chose differently. When his release date approached, he sent word through lawyers that he was moving to Oregon, starting fresh where the Cooper name meant nothing. No contact requested or desired. Grandpa respected his wishes, though I saw him check Oregon news sometimes, looking for word of a man rebuilding himself far from the wreckage of his choices. "Some people need distance to find themselves," he said once. "Maybe Richard will discover who he is when he's not trying to be what he thought I wanted." The annual family reunions resumed, but different now. No fancy ballrooms or social climbing, just cookouts at the lake house Grandpa bought with honest money, where kids could run barefoot and adults could relax without performing success. Where Cooper meant family, not fortune, and legacy was measured in laughter rather than portfolios. At the latest one, I watched Grandpa pushing Samantha on a rope swing he'd installed himself, her squeals of joy carrying across the water. Elena sat with Aunt Catherine, planning the next community build project. Ryan helped younger cousins with homework, patient in ways prison had taught him to be. The family we'd salvaged and rebuilt surrounded us. Imperfect but honest, smaller but stronger. "You did it," Elena said, sliding her arm around me. "You all did it. Took something broken and made it better." "We're still building," I said. "Every day, every choice, every time we pick people over profit. But yeah, we're getting there." Grandpa caught my eye across the yard and raised his beer in a silent toast. To second chances, to hard choices, to the kind of success that lets you sleep soundly, to family that shows up in storms and stays for the sunshine after. I raised my own drink in response, then turned back to the reunion, to the life we'd built from the ashes of what we'd lost. It wasn't the Cooper legacy my father had envisioned, built on lies and theft and the kind of ambition that consumes everything it touches. It was better, built on truth earned through justice, maintained by remembering that the greatest structures aren't the ones that reach highest, but the ones that stand longest. The ones built on foundations that won't crack under pressure. the ones that shelter rather than showcase. Grandpa had disappeared to save all this, had sacrificed 5 years to ensure Cooper Construction could be more than a monument to greed, had played a longer game than any of us imagined, betting that truth revealed late was better than lies maintained forever. He'd won that bet. We all had. And somewhere in Oregon, perhaps my father was learning the same lesson, that what you build matters less than how you build it and who you build it for. That legacy isn't what you leave behind but what you leave standing. That family isn't about blood or business or the appearance of success. It's about showing up when it matters, staying when it's hard, choosing each other over easier options, building something worth saving, then saving it when necessary, even if it takes 5 years, even if it costs everything, even if you have to disappear to make it possible. Because some things are worth any price. And family, real family, the kind you choose and create and fight for, is definitely one of them. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're like me, someone who spent years trying to earn love that was never truly offered, you know these aren't just stories. They're mirrors of our deepest wounds and greatest triumphs. Subscribe if these stories resonate with your journey. Hit that notification bell. Think of it as our regular meetup, where we share truths that others might not understand. And please, leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? What would you have done in my shoes? Your words matter to me, and they matter to everyone here who's walked this lonely path. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another story. Until then, remember, family isn't always blood, and sometimes the greatest gift is discovering who you truly are. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.